Good morning, everybody. Can you guys hear me, see the screen?
Yes.
Hey, so this is part two of the humanities in medicine series. So I try and do them on the fifth Wednesday that, because of some of the scheduling, I can doing it today. So we have done about half of the talk. So for some who may not remember or who may not have had the opportunity, I'm just going to go through the first few slides a little bit quickly. And then we'll dwell a little bit more on some of the other slides. And as you may recall, this is titled Think 72, Personal Finance or Pursuit of Happiness, is to re-examine, it is unusual for a urology department to talk about money and so on. But I think in the era of wellness, we all care about money. And my adage in life is money alone cannot bring happiness, but lack of money can bring a lot of unhappiness in life. And therefore, it's important we have a healthy relationship with money. And it's not a taboo. It's a good thing. And we all should be able to talk about this freely. And the reason is titled Think 72 is because when we put our money in our retirement account, there is something called RMD, which is called required minimum distribution. What that means is we can put money for tax purposes, either tax deferred or an IRA or a Roth IRA where we put our money that we have paid taxes on. But the tax deferred IRA, we have to start taking the money out at 72 years of age and then start paying taxes on it. So that's why it used to be 70 and a half, and the Congress changed the date to 72 because the life expectancy is increasing. And the Social Security actuarial table suggests that, calculates as every human is going to live about 150 years of age. And that's how this RMD is calculated. So they ask you to take about 2 to 3% every year, and around 115 years of age, it'll have very little left in it. The reason the government does this is because they don't want to miss out on the taxes on the earnings, although initially it's tax deferred. So the other thing we want to think of 72 is for this reason. When you want to calculate your doubling time, so if you have $100,000 and you want to know when it will become $200,000 with reasonable investment strategies, you take 72 and divide it by rate of return. So if you have 8%, if you have say a 10% return on it, then it will double in about 7.2 years. So that's roughly to calculate. And what we really want to do is to have a healthy investment where it doubles in a reasonable amount of time so that you can leave the capital as it is and live out of the growth, so that you always have the corpus to live out of when you're retiring. And then, a couple of decisions, this is a lot of this is geared towards young faculty, residents and fellows, because some of the senior faculty and all that are very familiar with a lot of this stuff. You're wondering, how much of a home you should buy. Usually 2x of your gross income. So always think how much you can afford, because there are banks who lend you more money, but try not to be influenced by how much you can borrow. Now, this is a general rule of thumb, but in areas where the cost of living is very, very high, like New York City or so on, then of course you might have to go higher up to have a roof over your head. And the other thing we talked about is selecting a financial advisor. And there are a couple of things we talked about. In our profession, we are committed to our patients. That's our fundamental responsibility. We do no harm. The legal profession also has what they call fiduciary response duty to the client. The lawyer must at all times act in the best interest of the client and must take a full disclosure. The recent example, when the Senate impeached, when was trying to have the impeachment trial for the former president, The former president reportedly requested the lawyers to talk about how the election was stolen, even though there was enough evidence it was not. So the entire legal team resigned, and then they have to recruit a new legal team. So there are ethics and there are fiduciary responsibility. Ethics is we never do anything wrong or lie. Fiduciary responsibility is you defend your client, and of course the new lawyers came in and they defended the president on terms of the First Amendment rights and the constitutionality of the impeachment trial. So I think those are fair things to do. So the point here is that these professions do have fiduciary responsibility to their clients and to their patients. However, when you take financial advisors, they do not necessarily need to have fiduciary duty. So in other words, the financial advisor, there are financial advisors who have fiduciary responsibility. So when we are trying to recruit a financial advisor, please ask this question, whether you have fiduciary duty. And if they do, they will always work in the interest of the client. But a lot of financial advisors are non-fiduciaries, and the problem is, so they could be selling you an insurance product that may not be in your best interest because they don't have to act in your best interest. And it's a very awkward situation. And I recall I told you guys that how much money I lost because I worked with a financial advisor who did not have fiduciary responsibility. And to me, it was shocking that a financial advisor would not have a fiduciary responsibility to the client. But it shouldn't have been shocking because I should have been smarter than this, but I was not. And I learned it the hard way. So when you guys work with a financial advisor, first ask the question whether it's worth working with a financial advisor after the information I'm going to give you today. And then if you choose to, just check with them whether there is a fiduciary duty, or if they don't have fiduciary and you still want to work with them, then work out a payment model where they're not richer or poorer for taking care of you. It's a straight fee and they're providing you with the service. In 2016, the Department of Labor introduced the fiduciary rule for financial advisors, but then when the Republican government came in, they reversed it in 2018. The other thing we need to be aware of when we deal with financial advisors is that profession generally has a very low barrier to entry. And we compare the amount of training we have to go through in our medical profession to do what we do. Here, they need to do a few months of courses and pass a couple of tests, and they can become a financial advisor. So we just need to be cognizant of it when we deal with this. And if we are not aware of it and we choose the wrong person, it can cost us a lot over a period of time. And this is the motto in this country: pursuit of happiness. I would argue it has to be health and happiness. And talking about determinant of health, we have gone through this before. It's physical, mental, social, and financial. And then we are focusing on the financial health today. Just to recall, life is all about relationships, and a relationship with everything and everything we do, relationship with people, relationship with the environment, institution, job, and so on. One relationship that strongly influences us is money, and they broadly can be categorized under acquisition of money, spending, and managing money. And the goal, an ideal goal when we deal with money, is to be right in the middle, where we are secure with what we are doing. In other words, if we just think of acquisition, for example, if we don't earn enough money and we can't pay our bills, that's not a comfortable situation. On the other hand, life cannot be all about just earning money and being greedy. That can invade into other aspects of our life. Same thing with spending. We earn money to spend. It's good for the economy. It's good for our well-being. There's a spectrum. If you're insecure about spending every dime, then that's not the best way. On the other hand, you shouldn't be throwing money away because it has value and so on. So it's a question of just thinking through it. And what we'll talk about today is really focusing on management. And how to be smart about where you put your money in and how we manage it so that we secure the future for ourselves, family, and society at large. Now, the goal is we work hard for say 30 or 40 years in our professional life, and ultimately, I was talking to my wife the other day, and I said, every time we sign a contract for a job, what we're really in return for what we get, which could be training, job, money, and all that, what we're really doing is signing our time away. So, you have a job contract and you want to take 2 days off. Now you got to go ask back for your time. You got to apply, and we all do this. So what you really want is to get your time back. And in order to do that, you have to be professionally satisfied that you feel that you've done what you wanted to do. And then you need to have enough money so that you don't have to work, but you can live out of the money you save. In order for us to do that, and for us to have, we all have a pretty good standard of living compared to most Americans. And in order for us to maintain the reasonable standard of living that we are used to, we all have to have substantial money in the bank account for us to retire. So the first thing is, instead of us working for our money, which is what we'll do most of our life, we want the money to work for us so that we save enough money that we feel financially secure, which is good for our health as we get older. Last thing you want to be worrying about is about money, because there are other health issues that we would have to deal with. We all have passions. We like to pursue that. It allows you to do different things in life because you can take calculated risks. Um, when people are financially secure, then they don't have to worry about money, so they can focus on creativity. They could be healthy employees and a better workforce. And just put all this in perspective, that once we have reasonable money and you have a financial plan in place, and the paycheck is a byproduct, not a end product. End product is what we do here in our department. We take care of patients, we talk about research, we talk about teaching, and those are the real products that we put out. And we're not insecure. We are very fortunate to have a good job, and that pays reasonably well. So I think, so we're just thinking through this, and having this healthy relationship would help us to build a great future. Now, I briefly talked about the universal basic income experiment, that what happens if we pay everybody a certain amount of money and people don't have to work for it. I'm not going to go into this again, but interestingly, this has become very topical. The recent bill that's passing through Congress, where President Biden is trying to get $1.9 trillion approved, part of that package is, beginning in July, they want to pay $300 per child for 6 months between July and December. So this is another form of basic universal income experiment. If you think of a mother who has 3 children and they're getting $900 a month for 6 months, so that mother doesn't necessarily have to work. So this is now being considered, but it's coming back in another form. It'll be interesting to see what impact it would have. And I don't think we're going to focus on that today, but I just was curious that how this is being modeled differently in this country, and it takes a pandemic to think of new ideas. So what you really want to think of is what your net worth is. And as you can see, these are very basic net worth calculations. So every time we talk about something, we need to say, okay, how much am I worth? And continue to monitor your net worth over a period of time. And this is how we calculate. You take your assets, take your liabilities away, and then you know how much you're worth, and you kind of have a goal in your mind, what should be your net worth. And then you have a goal to set. Say, so when you retire, say you want to have $1 million in your account, then you kind of work towards it, plan your investments, invest in an appropriate property, and so on and so forth. So the real question is, we again briefly touched on this, that's why I'm rushing through this a little bit today, is to how to become a millionaire. This is the recipe that most people use. It's time, capital, and knowledge. So for young men and women in this audience here, you have time. Your capital will come once you finish your training and move forward, but you have time. So start investing now. A small amount of investment with the doubling time, the compound return on it, and the value of time. You'll be surprised how much more money you'll have at the end of your job or retirement when you're into your 60s or 70s. by just starting early in your 30s. So take advantage of your time. Capital will happen as you move forward. And then what we'll talk about today is the knowledge. And even if you have the time and even if we have the capital, I think having knowledge is important. And we don't get taught all this in a formal training session like we are doing this morning, only to find out years later, which somebody has spoken to us and we could have done better. So a lot of things we do in our department is because, at least I felt shocked when I got out of training and so on. As you live your life, you realize that these are important and we should talk about it so that residents and fellows are very familiar on thinking on these lines. So the first question is, you have to grow your net worth. And just remember, it's not how much you earn, it's how much you keep. So there are people who earn tons and tons of money, but if you don't manage it, it ain't going to go very well. So this is a path to become a millionaire. And so the first is we all earn. And I think that will increase with time for residents and fellows. But what you could build your habit today is to save about 20% of your gross income. And I think this is hard to accomplish. I have struggled with it. I still don't think I do a good job on this, but nevertheless, that's a reasonable goal. Okay. Now, once you save it, then please invest it. And we'll talk about, I'm just going to give you some basic strategies in investment. This is not the only way to do it, but if you use these things, if you earn what you're doing and then save 20% and invest wisely, like we'll talk about in a couple of minutes, you will become a millionaire. And if you do that, and then you can do everything else. You can retire at your will, you pursue your passion, you can feel secure, and you'll feel fulfilled in your life financially. I'm going to stop here for a bit. Any questions or thoughts so far before we move into some of the details? Somebody just thinking, anybody who's not talking could mute, please. So if you're not talking, would you mind muting, please? Thank you. So the topics we'll cover today, this is where we didn't go into detail, so we'll take our time doing it. So the topics we'll try and cover today, we cannot cover all these topics, but we'll try some of the stuff. One is we'll talk about insurance. We'll talk about investments, which are the general principles. We'll talk about retirement investments. And then there are a couple of things that the savings plan, there are two savings plan you can consider. One is the college saving plan. So if you have a young child at home, this is the time to do it. So the advantage of this college plan is you can contribute to it, and then the earnings are tax deferred as long as you use it for college purposes. And I can tell you, anybody who has raised children, now I got 2 kids in college, it's a huge strain financially on any family with colleges being so expensive now. So something to consider. And I think when you have young children, this is a time to start. And then healthcare savings. This is not particularly applicable to us in this setting, but a lot of people are self-employed, a lot of doctors, and especially if you're going to private practice and all that, the healthcare savings is a good tax-deferred contribution that is advantageous. And the last thing is estate planning. Again, this may not be immediate for most of us, but if you continue to do well, and a lot of doctors can get into a stage that if your net worth, I mean, this number keeps going up every year and it can change, but if your net worth is more than $11 million, then that attracts some estate taxes. So you might want to plan that accordingly if you're at a very high net worth individual. For most people, that's not an issue, but something for you to be aware of, because once you hit that mark and you have to pay a lot of money, that could be tricky. For this audience, we'll focus on 3 things today: the insurance, investments, general principles, and retirement investments. So I guess the basic thing, so the first thing is we all need life insurance, and nobody would argue that whether this is necessary or not. Now, the thing we need to be familiar with is the various types of life insurance that are out there. So they are broadly three categories. The first thing is called the term life insurance. The second is called whole or universal life insurance. And the third is called the variable life insurance. Now, each company that markets it may have a term for it, but these are the broad principles. So in term life insurance, we only pay a premium and it pays only at the time of death. It has no cash value. Okay. Now, whole or universal life insurance is what happens is we pay the premium plus we say put some additional money to it, and then what the company will do is go invest it. And these funds are invested in fixed income, which means the yield will be low, but it will be much more secure. The third is the variable life insurance, where we pay a premium. In addition, we pay some more money, and that money gets invested in stocks and bonds. And so both the whole life and the universal insurance and the variable life insurance would have cash value because we have already paid more money in addition to the premium, and therefore they're invested and there is some money. So if you look at it, if you talk to an insurance agent, it is in their interest to sell you a whole or a universal life insurance, or into greater interest if they want to sell you a variable life insurance. This is because anytime they take your money in investment, there's a commission involved. In addition, because these things bring income to the insurer, there is a lot of incentive for various financial advisors as well as the insurance agent to sell you these products, because there's a what they call the preload. There is a big commission to these agents for getting it. And from our point of view, it'll sound like, you pay $300, we'll cover you for $500,000 if you die. In addition, when you pay it for 20 years, you'll also get $25,000. Okay, it sounds like a reasonable way to save money, but these two things are real mistakes. So don't do that. Don't do whole for universal insurance or the variable life insurance, because they're expensive. The purpose of a life insurance is, in the event something happens to you, then you want your family taken care of. So if you just do the term life insurance, and if you're in good health, and if you do it when you're very young, these are relatively inexpensive and it's a necessity. When I moved to University of Nebraska, they were talking about this a lot. There was a cardiothoracic surgeon who was extremely busy and had 4 children and a wife. And then he was driving to work, had a car crash and died. And they found out he did not have life insurance. Just imagine 4 children, a wife, or a dad going to work and not coming home. So we can't, we owe it to ourselves and to our family that we can't do this. So all of us should have term life insurance and then the real question is, how much insurance do we buy? Okay. For your family, you can look at how much it costs to run your household. Okay. Suddenly, if you're not there, the rule of thumb is they should at least have 5 years. The way I've calculated is, if something happens to me today, I have enough life insurance and savings that my wife can take care of my children and herself without having to go to work. And that is how I have figured out. It may not be the same lifestyle, but I think the house will be paid for and she should feel comfortable taking care of it. And I think that's how we all should plan. So when you buy insurance, think how much money you need per year. You should have at least 5 years. Let's assume your annual expense for your house is $100,000. Then you should at least have $500,000 insurance, if not more. Okay. And the other thing is, you should be renewable for at least 20 years. So because you never know when it's going to happen. It's cheap when you get it. So don't take 5 years, 10 years insurance, because then what happens after 10 years? Now we are 10 years older, you might have to go through a health checkup to get the same insurance, and the insurance becomes expensive. So when you're taking your insurance, just look at 2 things. First is just stick with term life insurance and make sure the amount of money you're insuring is for at least 5 years, and be sure that it's renewable for at least 20 years. Okay. And then these are pretty inexpensive for the value we get. For somebody 35-year-old who's a non-smoker, the 20-year term is about $300 annually. And I think I think you can get, and there's a lot of competition in this market. So shop around and try and get the best term insurance that you can get. Now, we do get some life insurance with the employer, but that is not sufficient. It usually doesn't meet this criteria of 5+ years. So life insurance at work itself may not be sufficient for us to do. Okay, so something for us to think about. Any questions on life insurance? This is an important topic for young people in the audience. So. Now, question for the residents. Are you guys familiar with all this? Is this all too basic for you?
Well, actually, I've been through this because, I actually just purchased this. My question was that, do you recommend that both us as a surgeon and a spouse have different life insurances? Is it recommended?
I'm sorry, what is it again, Sarush? I can't hear you well.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you, Sarush.
Yeah, I'm saying that, for example, us as the surgeon and, the main person who works supposedly buy life insurance. Do you recommend that the spouse also has a separate life insurance?
Yes, I think it's a good idea because remember, our spouse, especially for several of us, we are very fortunate to have women who stay at home, take care of our children. We talk about a balanced life, and life is nothing without a healthy family. So, if something happens to our spouse, then we have to meet the daycare expenses and so on, and we'll be surprised how expensive it is. So it is a good idea to get an insurance for your spouse as well. But you may not want to do the same amount as you do, but a reasonable amount so that you can take care of the household. I think that's a reasonable thing to do.
Thank you.
Any other questions for any of the other residents, fellows? Okay. If it's too basic, guys, I apologize.
One more comment, Dr. Balaji, the employer paid insurance is kind of pre-tax. So in case, if they're paying off, that's taxable versus self-insured, or when we pay for the insurance after tax money, that's not taxable. Is that correct, Dr. Balaji?
Yeah, so most of the insurance, life insurance premium are taxable, Hari. So the employer thing may be a little bit different, but the life insurance is not like a retirement plan. It's taxable. You pay with your post-tax money, and when the life insurance money comes in, that's also taxable, Hari. So I don't think there's a whole lot of tax benefits to the common term insurance.
For the disability, they specifically say, if you pay with the pre-tax money, it's
yes,
taxable.
You're right. Disability is different. I'm going to talk about that next. So I agree with you, Hari. Disability insurance is different. I'll talk about a little bit. It's not the same with life insurance. Yeah,
so I think that already the employer just give us a kind of limited disability insurance, and the life insurance is something that employers, at least, in our case, never commit for it. So that is something that we personally should go for. But probably the point that you mentioned is about the disability, group disability insurance.
Yes. So that's a nice segue into the next topic I want to talk about. So the other question is, there are tons of insurance. Okay, there is something called the cancer insurance. There's something, because remember, guys, the insurance is one of the most profitable businesses out there, because think of this way. You have a flood insurance, okay? As long as flood never happens, they don't pay. They keep the premium. Now, if flood happens, they have to pay out. The next year, the premium goes up. So this is a business that doesn't lose money. You either earn money up front, or if you have a payout, you figure out a way of collecting more premium the following year. So this is a great business to be in, okay? And these are done by actuaries because they work out a probability. So everything is a number. The reason you get a life insurance is they say, well, if I'm out of a million people are insured, this is a probability of death over that amount of period. And they can calculate everything very well. This is very simple math. And that's how they continue to make profit. And so every time you do something, you go buy a toaster at Walmart, as you exit, they say, would you like to take insurance for your toaster? The rule of thumb is do not take any insurance or service contracts if you can afford the loss. So for example, the toaster, I buy a toaster for $50 and it goes up, yeah, it's a pain, but I can afford $50, okay? A refrigerator I buy for $2,000, yeah, it's another big chunk of money, but I can manage another $2,000. My car, on the other hand, if it's a $30,000 car, if something happens, if it's total, $30,000 will dent most of our budgets. It's not manageable. So the rule of thumb, you take insurance if you cannot afford the loss, okay? Because on long term, insurance is always more expensive. And just remember this, from a toaster to a refrigerator, and they have figured out that if you buy a refrigerator, you got a warranty for a year anyway. And after that, there are other things you can do, like maintenance contracts rather than insurance for the refrigerator. So there are so many things you could do. So anytime somebody asks you at the checkout counter, do you want to take an insurance? Just ask the question, can I manage the loss? If the answer is yes, don't take insurance. We actually do this even for, in our basic science lab and all that, we have very expensive equipment and we have to make this decision whether we should get insurance or not. And it's a real problem because, insurance is expensive. Just to give you an example, one of the changes I made when I took this job here, with the cystoscopes we use in our office, the annual insurance for the cystoscope was $50,000. Okay, guys, just to give you that perspective, that's a lot of money, just insuring the cystoscope. And then these cystoscopes are breaking all the time because we put them in a steroid autoclave. They're not meant to. And the company will repair it, replace it, and all that. We made sure that we paid $50,000. And each cystoscope cost about $15,000. So we had 3 or 4 of them. And these guys were having a feast by just getting the insurance money. So the first thing I did was got rid of it and saved $50,000 for a department. And the way I approached it was, first, can I handle a $15,000 loss cystoscope? The answer is we could probably do. Most importantly, we had to restrict the breakage. So we went away from sterile sterilization to chemical sterilization to reduce the breakage and think of, the Labry and other kind of cystoscopes so that we don't do it. So this is a very important issue because otherwise in businesses, this is a huge cost to us and we cannot afford to continue doing this. Then you'll never get your business into in black. The next thing is Hari and Sarush were talking about is the disability insurance. Hari is correct. So at some point, we have to pay taxes on the money. Okay, so the way IRS looks at it is any income should be taxed at some point. Okay, now the life insurance and premium and all that you pay with tax money, and any premium, any life insurance product you get taxed. So that's what they call double taxation. Now with disability, if you pay with your pre-tax money, which is some of the disability insurance that our employee pays, the employer pays, then the money you get when you get disabled gets taxed. On the other hand, there are disability insurance you can actually pay with your tax dollars. So after from your paycheck, when you actually get the disability, then that money is tax-free. Now I have a disability insurance outside work, and I got a disability, it's a 20-year term. I got it for disability for $3,000, and I pay a premium of $128 a month. And I was recently talking to my financial advisor and said, look, do I really need to? Because what is $3,000 going to do to me down the road? And his argument was, look, this $3,000 is tax-free. So if you're on a high tax bracket rate, suddenly, especially if you're disabled, then suddenly that may become valuable money. Remember, most of the disability insurance have a waiting period. So that's why it's called a short-term and a long-term disability. And the long-term disability usually kicks in after 6 months. And one has to look at the fine prints, because what we consider as disability may not be viewed as disability by the insurer. So you have to be very careful. And the second thing is, most disability insurance cap payment are 66% of your salary. So if you get disabled, you will never make the same money that you did when you were fully employed. So by the employer's disability, you can get 66%. On top of it, you have a supplemental disability insurance. That $3,000 without taxes suddenly adds up, and that's every month. And even that every month is not forever. It's only for a finite amount of period. So there are a lot of fine prints into it. You might want to look at it very carefully, but I think disability insurance is very important, because I think dying is one thing, and being disabled and having to take care of yourself and your family can be very, very difficult. And so one has to really review the fine prints and make sure that disability insurance is right for you. Any questions on the disability insurance?
Sorry, Dr. Balaji, do anyone ever get short-term disability insurance?
We all should. I think we all should.
Sarush, I think you should look at your compensation plan wherever you're working. For UF faculty, there is a kind of built-in short-term system that probably makes getting the insurance not worth the expense. So you may have a deal, but you really want to look at your compensation plan.
And the other thing is, this is probably a little bit more important for residents, because faculty usually have some resources they can manage. At least when I was a resident, I'm not a resident these days, maybe richer, but we live paycheck to paycheck. So we just made our ends meet. So I'm sure it's not very different now. So you guys might want to be a little bit careful with this, because you just don't have the same financial depth as an attending has. So. Any other questions on this? Okay, so now we'll go into investments. Okay, so we generally think the concept is, we think the return is on the investment, on the capital. What the return is actually on the risk we take. Okay, and I think this is the fundamental concept that we to the GameStop saga, and then since then I started following it. Remember, a lot of us invest money in the stock market. The stock market is based on the perception of the market. So it may not necessarily be related to the fact. And when humans get involved, there are a lot of emotions involved. So it happens at an individual level, at a group level, institution level. It happens at the market and the national level. Ultimately, it's human emotions that drives everything. So when you work with the stock market, we need to understand all these ups and downs we see may not necessarily be real. The second thing we have to recognize, the fundamental difference between gambling and investment. Gambling is you're playing the odds, you're trying your luck out, okay? Investment cannot be gambling, because investment is you're looking at various other parameters. You're looking at the dividends, you're looking for a price to earnings ratio, we are looking at growth opportunities. There are so many variables we look at, and then we try and make an informed decisions. When investments fail, we are just working on the probability. So if we say there's a 70% probability of being where we want to be, there's a 30% probability wouldn't. So you never know these probabilities are real. So what you want to do with investments is the money you have to invest is what you have. What we should really manage is risk management. And this graph shows here that as you take more risk, then the return increases. And you can put them in deposits, bonds, and then these are what I call low risk investments. Then you get into some of the intermediate risk investment like stocks, real estate, and so on. And then eventually you get into very high risk investments. And I'll show you a pyramid on these investments. Now think of this here. If you have, and as we take more risk, then our returns go higher. But then the volatility also increases, which means your value, the value of your investment goes up and down a lot. And so the bottom line, I think just not investments, even in our life decisions. I think we are all fundamentally different. We are all wired that way in terms of risk tolerance, okay? And in fact, that actually tells us the kind of subspecialties we choose to practice. Somebody might prefer to become an internist or something a lot safer than becoming a surgeon. And among surgeons, we all have risk tolerance. Some guy would do very complex advanced cases. Some say, you know what, I'm not so sure. Let me think of something. This fundamental nature that within us, with the way we are all wired, is the risk tolerance, and that's what affects investment as well. So in order for us, remember, at the end of the day, this is money. This alone is not about happiness. What you really want to do is go back to that relationship with the money slide I showed you. You want to feel secure. And remember that word. It's about being secure about where you are. It's not about being excited. I don't want to get excited every morning. Oh God, my stocks have gone up. Or I don't want to be down in the dumps. Shoot, I lost so much money. That's not my role. My role is I just want to be secure. The day when it comes, I'm ready to retire. I should be able to do it safely and effectively. And God forbid something happens to me. I want my family to be taken care of like I would have taken care of them. I think those are the goals we are trying to achieve. So in order for us to do that, we have to reflect on ourselves and see where we are in terms of our risk tolerance. And depending on our own assessment, and be honest with yourself, there's nothing wrong in being a very risk-averse individual. And there's nothing macho about being a very risky guy. It's not a judgment call. You just need to know, when you take this kind of risk, are you comfortable with it? And do you feel secure? So you can see here on the low risk, you have all the money market account, CDs, treasury bonds, and so on. As you go into a stock market risk, the limited risk is you can invest in blue chip stocks. And I'm going to talk to you about, hopefully I'm not running behind. Oh, sure, I got only 15 minutes. Okay. I'm going to skip through this slide. This is self-explanatory, and if any of you are interested, let me know. I'm happy to share this talk with you guys. So I'm just this is the money slide, guys. So I want you guys to take home this message, okay? And I tell you, this has changed the way I invest and I manage my life, and it has made me feel so secure that I don't really worry about this anymore, okay? But it took me 15 years to learn this, and I'm going to share the secret with you. What do you invest in? The first thing is keep the cost of investment low, okay? When you look at mutual funds and all that, the thing you want to look at is what they call the expense ratio, okay? So first is, when you have an invest, you can look at a passive versus active management. And there are lots and lots of studies done by large business schools looking at long-term follow-up. Active management does not necessarily do any better than passive management, okay? We are very good at data analysis. We talk about all sorts of data. I can tell you, don't let anybody tell you on a long-term basis, active management is better, because active management is just one variable. There are so many other variables in the market that is like controlling the weather. It ain't going to work. So to us, the risk that we put the money in a stock is necessary, and that passive management is better than active management. That's a decision that I have made in my life, and I would strongly recommend that you consider that. When you invest, there are two, see, for example, the goal is you invest $100 and you get $10 out of it. You want to keep all those $10. You don't want anybody taking that $10 away, okay? There are two things that will take that money from the $10. One is what I call the expense ratio. And let me explain this to you guys. This is something, let's say you are investing in a mutual fund, okay? And that mutual fund has an expense ratio of 1%. What that means is, if you put $100, then you get, say you get $5 return that year, the mutual fund manager will first take 1% out of it and give you 4%. Let's assume that mutual fund lost 5% that year. Then the mutual fund manager will take 1% out of your capital. So your loss will be 6%. Both these things do two things. Ultimately, the reason our money double in that time and we make a lot of money is because we have the capital to grow. So you need money to grow. Anytime anybody invades into that capital, then your growth is affected. And when you compound it with time, that's a huge loss for us. So in this model, you initially put $90, you already lost $5 in the market, so it's 95. Now the expense rate, the mutual fund guy takes another $1 out of it. You're only left with $94 for the growth next year. Next year you go by 5%, now it becomes $98. This guy takes $1 away, now it's only $97. And so this continued expense ratio on long term will eat up your growth. So any expense ratio more than 0.1% is too much, and you should look at all your investments and just clean out all investments that have expense ratio to your period. It should be close to zero, or I do not want to invest in anything more than 0.1%. So at least that's my philosophy, and I have balanced all my portfolio and so on to make sure that this is the best way to do it. The other thing that can take money away from your growth are taxes. And that's why there are various investment strategies. You know, there are financial guys who argue that, look, even before you invest the money, think of the taxes you're going to pay and invest accordingly, because tax can be a huge deal. You know, some of our marginal tax rates, which is the highest taxes we pay on our income, are very, very high. And so it can be 1/3 of your income. So you pay $100, you get $100, you may pay $33, $34 on it. That's a lot of money gone. So some people will argue, you know, investment should be tax-based. Some people would argue it should be growth-based. There are so many strategies we can adapt. You need to kind of take time to read about all these things. And like any other education, you have to continuously read up on all this, talk to people. You know, I find listening to podcasts very useful. I seem to be an audio learner, so I learn a lot doing that way. And when you invest, think of expense ratio. So go back and look at all your portfolios, make sure you don't have any expense ratio more than 0.1%, and then visit the taxation issue. So how do we reduce the expense ratio? The best thing is to use index funds. Now, remember, the way the mutual fund market, everything grows in this country, is people flock around when there's easy money to make. It's human nature, okay? Other professions are not like ours. We work really hard, long hours, whether we get paid or not. Ethically, we are different. And I think while we are very proud of it, we have to understand the rest of the world doesn't work that way, okay? There are charlatans who are looking at it. There are guys who say, well, doctors have deep pockets, let's go after them. There are people there vying for every dollar in your pocket, and you have to be smart to manage it. If you let them cheat you, then you're going to be cheated. There are just people out there. So once the government said that, look, we have to create the 401k plan and all the various other retirement plans, immediately the financial giants got into it. They came up with mutual funds, this and that, with high expense ratios, sucking up all our earnings. So, and then I'm going to talk to you about a guy called Jack Bogle, who changed the entire field. But what I really want to introduce you to is the index funds. Index funds are passively managed funds. They're very low cost. They are very low turnover. They are pretty tax efficient. They are passively managed. They track the market well. These are the qualities of an index fund, and this is what we need to do. So the opposite of the index funds are the mutual funds, which are actively managed with high expense ratio. And I don't think any of our investments should be in mutual funds unless you really have an exceptional reason to do so, okay? But this is where when you talk to your financial guys, they'll tell you, no, look at this mutual fund is really doing well. And I'm sure they are. But the odds are 2/3 of all the mutual funds, same of any given year, index beating actively managed, okay? So again, we are not trying to be greedy here. We are not trying to make too much money, and because we have a profession to lead, all that we are trying to do is be secure our future, and secure the future for our family. Never lose sight of this goal. So, you know, the guy says, look, by putting in here, you're going to make 2%. Think this way. What is that 2% going to do to you? Are you going to be any happier? I mean, if that's not the answer, why even bother with it? Just be safe, manage your risk so that we don't do anything dumb or stupid with our money. Then it'll be very hard to catch up, okay? And a lot of credit for this index funds really goes to Jack Bogle. So there is a whole group of investors. They call themselves Bogle heads, and they have conferences every year. And Jack Bogle was the founder and CEO of Vanguard. Now, Vanguard is a company that really brought index fund to the market. So to my mind, there are two things that have happened in the investment market that has really changed how common people like us can think and do about this. One is the index funds. Two is the free trading that's available on various investment platforms. Remember, you know, if you had to trade a stock 20 years ago, you need to have a broker. The broker has to take a big commission. Then came the online platforms. I remember Ameritrade, you had to buy or sell a stock, it was $7. And now the brokerage fees are zero. And you can trade freely. And I really think these two things has made a common man a smart investor, okay, and a safe and an effective investor. And I think that's the key. So Jack Bogle found the Vanguard. He said its investment is not gambling or speculation. You really think through it, they reduce the broker fees as much as possible and hold a lifetime of dividends and dollar cost average. Okay, I don't have time to talk about the role of dividends. So when you buy a stock, there are, Warren Buffett, who was one of the billionaires who made money just by investing. He didn't have Microsoft or Amazon, but just by investing. And he, not so long ago, he started with $1 million, and now he's worth, I don't know, 30, 40 billion dollars. But his strategy is what we call value-based investing. And as you guys look at investing money now, think of things now that have gone down because of COVID, and you expect them to come up when COVID is over. Those stocks are priced very low and they're undervalued. The stock market has been crazy, but nevertheless, just look for those stocks and make what you call value-based investing. So I really want you guys to consider investing in ETFs or exchange traded funds, which are basically index funds. And the other thing we talked about, I think in another talk, we talked about what we call diversification. So remember, something to think of is what we call sequence of return. What that means is, say, for example, when you're in the market, it's going to be volatile, okay? Further you're away from your retirement, then you can afford it to be more volatile. It can take 3-4 years to recover, and it's not a big deal. Let's assume that you really worked hard. Now you have $1 million and you're planning to retire. And usually people plan to take 5% out of that corpus. Let's say you're a very conservative guy, you want to take 4%. So you're hoping to have $1 million in the account and take $40,000 every year for your living expenses. Suddenly the market crashes, okay? Now that $1 million becomes $750,000. And you still need $40,000 to income. Now you're going to eat more into the capital, then it's hard to argue, hard for it to grow. You don't have time to do it. So in order to manage that, you diversify. So when you are young and you're further away from retirement, then you invest more in stocks so that let it really aggressively grow, because even if it's volatile, it's not a big deal. However, when you're close to retirement, gradually shifting money into safer returns. And how do you know what is safer? On a long-term basis, you can look at it. Bonds and stocks start off around an average return over several years. Stocks can go as high as 13%. Bonds and things can need about 9%. I think it's a little bit high, but this is what this data shows. I'm not really sure. But so you might want to diversify, and this is what we call balancing your portfolio. So you decide where you want to be, because values change over a period of time. Set yourself a time, one time in the year, maybe when you're doing your taxes, and make sure you balance it so that you're right where you want to be. Currently now I'm pretty much invested all in stocks because, closer to retirement, we might change it. But you want to be as aggressive as you can be when you're young. And as you're getting older, old is not an age, it's when you're closer to retirement, it's a better way to look at it. Some people might decide to retire at 60, some might work longer, it doesn't really matter. Just plan your life accordingly, diversifying. Okay, think long-term, do small number of investments, don't have 100 stocks in your portfolio, just 5 or 10, balance annually, and beware of the market and not be obsessed. Okay, so I think we are getting very close now. I got only a minute, so I'll open to questions and I can continue with part 3 later because there's a lot to talk about. And I'm sorry, I'm not able to finish this on time. Any questions from our residents? It's really good towards the residence fellows, and any insight faculty can give to our residents will really be appreciated. No questions?
So, Dr. Balaji, thank you for the talk. Aside from the stock market investment, what's your opinion about investing in other businesses to have like a passive income?
Yes, that's a great question. Yeah, so it's called investments in this business. Each of them have pros and cons. A lot of people and a lot of doctors especially invest in real estate. And the real estate investment can be owning individual properties or working through co-ops with some returns on it. And I think those, I mean, again, it's part of diversification. People have looked at it, instead of going through a co-op and working with the real estate, just invest it in a real estate ETF, diversified on the market. And the return difference, there is a difference. And, and in my mind, getting a 2 or 3% difference is not worth it, And so if you're going to invest it, I would suggest there are a lot of real estate ETFs you can invest it. And the stock market, you can invest ETFs into everything from mineral to energy to utilities to high tech. So the stock market is so versatile and so safe. That I personally prefer that kind of investment so that it doesn't take a whole lot of management. The only other thing I would suggest we could do is if we have some disposable income, which means if you lose it, it's okay, then we can consider some really aggressive high risk investments. That way you can really make some quick money, but that has to be truly, truly disposable, after you covered all your insurance and retirement and so on, maybe option. And the other thing is start something that will grow in value. Like the company you started, Bashad, that's a good idea. Go start your own company. That way, if it ever comes to the market, then the value would have grown. That's how Amazon, Jeff Bezos became rich, or Facebook. These are, of course, extreme examples. But nevertheless, investing in something that will grow in value over time is another way to become rich.
Thank you, Dr. Balaji.
Any other? Okay, thanks everybody. I'm sorry we went over a couple of minutes. You guys enjoy your week. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you so much. This was very informative.
Thank you. Bye.